Namaste. So we are with Sri Aurobindo's collected works, volume 10 and 11, Records of Yoga. Once again, it's wonderful to read them, but a word of caution. What the Master has done, don't try to imitate what the Master has done. Try to follow what the Master asks you to do. If Sri Aurobindo wanted us to follow the records of yoga, they were all available. He would have just said, children, go ahead, print it and practice it. He didn't do that. He gave us the synthesis of yoga. Besides, in Sri Aurobindo's yoga, we see constant evolution. What was applicable in 1910 to 1920 is no more applicable 1920 to 1930. What was applicable between 1920 to 1930, the base will remain, but he has added new things, making it even easier. So things have evolved, they have changed in different ways. So for instance, as I have told earlier, if we see 1914 to 1920, you will hear about Mother, but mainly as Divine Shakti. 1926 onwards, 1927 onwards to be precise, it's the Mother, open to the Mother, open to her influence. You don't find it in, Saptachatustya. Why? Because he's the pathfinder. And yet it is a joy to read it, just for the joy of it. And what is the path that should be followed? It's very scientifically documented to that extent. Incidentally, today is what day? 16th November. Yogic Sadhana appeared for the first time on 20th November 1913. So very close to this. So then Saptachatustya we have already done. In the sense we picked up some snippets. So another aspect of record of yoga is automatic writings. So in automatic writing, Sri Aurobindo would sit. The process of automatic writing is known that you sit quietly and let an entity take your hand. Its equivalent with the Mother is when she used to play organ music. So there were hands which would come to her from the subtle physical. Beethoven's hands, other great musicians' hands, and they will say, please use your finger to play. Same thing applies here. And second aspect that, automatic writing, through that Sri Aurobindo was drawing into himself certain personalities of the past, whether they were his own or they were needed for the new creation, probably some aspiration in some beings. That's how I look at it, because when the Mother describes in the agenda the personalities of Murat and many other past, those personalities in which she had worked in some way, they started coming to her in many, many ways. And she had to take them and integrate them. This is the story in Shiv Puran. This part of the yoga where you deal with the subconscious of earth. So I look at it, Sri Aurobindo was not amusing himself or others that, okay, we'll do automatic writing. Most people speak of automatic writing as it is done and the rest is, he said that it is not to be practiced. But there is a truth behind it. How and why it was done. So there are things in the earth atmosphere which he was absorbing within himself. He would not say that. But he has said that it took 10 years for us to wipe off the earth's past. And many things he was integrating within himself to give them a new dimension and new direction. So this is how we have to look at it. In Shiv Puran, the story goes that there is a cave where Shiva goes and meditates. But Parvati is not allowed. So one day, she says, why? I am your wife. Why don't you allow me to go there? He says, the time has not come. But tell me the secret. No, I can't tell you. Mata rusht ho jati hai. She doesn't like that. Shiva is not telling her the secret. So one day on her own, she ventures into that cave. And there she sees so many skulls which suddenly come alive. And start holding her, crying, weeping, because now they know the World Mother has come and they want to be released from the state in which they are in. It's such a burden for her to bear. And then Shiva says that I know this is a work you have to do, but the time is not yet ready. So what Sri Aurobindo was doing through these automatic writings, my understanding, it's nowhere documented and nobody has said this, is that he was drawing into himself many elements from the past and integrating them. For instance, even before that, he had the apparition of Swami Vivekananda. Then Sri Ramakrishna comes and he says, Mandir Kado, Mandir Kado, Mandir Kado. And once more he comes, speaking of the story of the snake biting the tail. So many of these Danton, which was actually Sri Aurobindo's personality in the past, one of the persons through whom Sri Aurobindo was acting in French Revolution, was guillotined. And he comes and says, red terror, red terror, red terror. So we see very interesting. And there were some who were different types of humanity who worked with him. For instance, once he asked about Tilak. So we have that. Then another time when he asks about Anne Besant. And a third time when he speaks to another personality and he asks about Gandhi. So, I am not going into what all is revealed. But we must understand one thing, that these are not Sri Aurobindo's final views about anyone. It is not to be taken as Sri Aurobindo's views, because these were portions from different aspects of creation, present and past, which were coming to him and using his pen to write. So this is how one has to look at it. But one such writing, which is really interesting, which is part of the automatic writing, is Yogic Sadhan. So there, throughout, Sri Aurobindo would see Raja Ram Mohan Roy appear before him. And Sri Aurobindo wrote, and this is one writing which was published as a book in the beginning, and it used to be read even till 1920s. This book was one of the first books that was published. And it used to be read. Later on, Sri Aurobindo said, don't take it as if it is the final verdict of all that I have to say. Because as I said, yoga evolved. Second, this book could be misunderstood. So there was editor's note later on, Yogic Sadhan. And the editor's note said that we must understand that this process which is described is in very brief. And a lot of purification is required to follow this process. It's not something which you can just practice just like that. And it's an entirely tantric book, if you look at Yogic Sadhan. So I thought we'll read some passages. I found this a fascinating book. But as I said, don't start practicing it, but you'll understand that many things here which are given as a seed are basically, again, some fundamental principles of yoga. Like one of the fundamental principles of this yoga is surrender to the mother. So here it starts with, there is the knowledge, which is the Purusha aspect, and there is the will. And it starts by will. Will is the omnipotent. Start with the will and not with knowledge. But later on in synthesis, you will see that Sri Aurobindo says, we start with the method of Vedanta towards the aim of Tantra. But in Yogic Sadhan, which is primarily a tantric book, tantric in the true sense, not tantric that Shamshan Siddhis and Bhuta Siddhis and Pishach Siddhis. That is one of the most worst kind of misconceptions of Tantra, which is based on just a very confused understanding of a dark Tantra or some aspect of Tantra. But there is a white Tantra. White Tantra is about the divine powers, like Dash Mahavidya of the Upanishad. So there's the white Tantra. So some passages we'll read from here. My phone is telling me that I am not silent. Okay. So some passages we'll read from here. The proper course of the sadhana is just the opposite of the thing most people do. And you have also done. That being is coming and informing Sri Aurobindo while he is writing. People begin with the body and the prana, go on to the chitta and the manas, and finish up with the buddhi and the will. So this is how you will see Patanjali Yoga Sutras, no? Asanas, yama, niyam, asana, pranayam, nididhyasan, ityadi, and samadhi. The real course is to start with the will and finish with the body. So it just reverses the whole course. There is no need of asana, pranayama, kumbhak, chitta shuddhi, or anything else preparatory or preliminary if one starts with the will. So you will see that Sri Aurobindo's yoga actually starts that way. He doesn't say you don't do these things, but don't wait that I'll first do this, that, all kinds of things, then I will reach to the mother. Start with the mother and then keep collaborating her, working through these various processes. That was what Sri Ramakrishna came to show so far as yoga is concerned. Do the Shakti Upasana first, he said. Get Shakti and she will give you Sat. Will and Shakti are the first means necessary to the yogin. That was why he said always, remember you are Brahman. And he gave that as a central message to Swami Vivekananda. If you choose, you can be Shuddha, Siddha, or anything else. Or if you choose, you can be just the opposite. The first necessity is to believe in yourself. The second, in God. And the third, to believe in Kali. So actually, Sri Aurobindo in synthesis says that the two things that matter most in this yoga are faith and will. Whatever is a man's faith and will, ultimately he'll become that. But one has to just persist with it. Ultimately, through all the complexities, networks, difficulties, helpful elements, if you keep the faith and will persistent, you will end up becoming that. And then for that we must rely on God and in the Divine Mother. Educate the will first. Through the will, educate the jnanam. Through the jnanam, purify the chit, control the prana, and calm the manas. That is the real yoga, the Mahapanth. That is the true and only Tantra. The Vedanta starts with Buddhi, the Tantra with Shakti. And then I'll just read a few passages. It's too powerful. You see, this also we see. The question is how to start. The Shakti is in you. Let her work and assist her by taking the right attitude. This is what we see in Tantric Siddhi Prakaranam. Since the Shakti is in you, let her start working. But the working will be not the way human mind understands. In synthesis, Sri Aurobindo reminds us again and again. When the Divine Mother works, it's not the way human mind understands. That's why for a long time, the Divine does not accept right away. There is a time when you are asking, but the Divine is watching. When I'd come here, somebody asked, oh, 3 years, have you become an ashramite? I said, no. 4 years, have you become an ashramite? I said, भगवान की चौखट पर पड़े हैं, जब जरूरत होगा बुला लेंगे. I am waiting at the doorstep. He will open. He knows when to open. I'm not saying equating becoming an ashramite to, entry into God's chamber. But there is a period of time when you will keep on reading, doing things, but nothing may happen. That time we have to remember that he who chooses the infinite has been chosen by the infinite. He is not choosing to reveal. He will see whether there is a sincere offering or not. Because once the force starts working, after that, which way it will go? That's why the mother used the word adventure. There are things hidden in us. We have a very good image of ourselves. We are nice people. But when the yoga of Shakti starts, it will unearth everything. Not only the heights, but also the abysses. And she will take us through everything and cure and purify and transform. But to persist through the process requires colossal courage and faith and surrender. That's why Sri Aurobindo keeps insisting on that. Surrender is not easy as the path unfolds itself. It's good to start with surrender. Surrender is not like a ticket. One time you buy it, whatever it needs, and you enter into the path, and oh, such a lovely thing. Oh, nice. What is there in the... And as you go, sometimes there is dense darkness. That time, kahan aa gaye surrender kar karke? Where have we come after surrendering ourselves? Even God's voice is not heard. Are you there? Hello? Nothing. You wonder. Shouldn't wonder, but I'm just saying some people may wonder. Is it for real? Have I made a mistake? That is exactly what the darkness wants. To turn you back. You made a mistake. See, there were people who were telling you, don't enter. See, you made a mistake. And there are people I know who have gone away like that. So much work was done. This is just the last bit. When darkness is deepest, dawn is just round the corner, but they just turn away. So all this we have to understand. When the divine will begins to act, but at the end, what she will create is amazing. And I'll give just one example of, in the beginning in yoga, you will see a lot of snakes. You will see a lot of siewages. First the snakes, bhankar. Then you will see sewers flowing, dirty things and all. You see, ye kya hai? Yoga means I want to see God. What is all this? So you'll say, before you call God, let me clear the passage. And after some time, you will see that the snakes have vanished. And you will see that in place of sewers, there are nice gardens which have appeared. Actually, you will see it. Because this is the process of change. You have to confront. We don't know. We see sewers outside. But it's running through and through, canal. Our own personal Shiva is also there. So this is how the yoga Shakti. So the surrender. So she says that you have to keep that faith. The Shakti is in you. Let her work and assist her by taking the right attitude. You are the Shakti, Anumanta, Bhokta and Bharta. As Anumanta, give the command. As Sakshi, watch her work out the result. As Bhokta, enjoy the result. And as Bharta, help her by maintaining the Adhar. Do not ruin it by Tamasik Udasinta or Rajasic revolt. Be sure your will can never fail to act. You are the Gyata. So it starts with that. You have nothing else to do. Kali will do the rest. Be not troubled. Be not anxious. Be not in haste. You have all eternity before you. Why be in haste? Only do not be tamasic or idly waste your time. All these things should be in the subsequently writes. Ideal attitude towards time is you must want it here and now. At the same time, you must know that if you have to wait till eternity, you are ready to wait for the yoga. So this continues and it's very profound psychological insights that come here. Okay. Do not be discouraged by any failure or delay. It is purely a question of force and purity of the will. By purity, I mean freedom from desire. That's purity. Purity is not acting according to social conventions of purity. Social conventions of purity means continue to lead a life of desire, but within certain limits. Fulfill all your function. If you are an honest taxpayer, you are morally a pure person. Of course, you should pay taxes. That's different because you need it for a different reason. But don't confuse it with moral purity. Somebody even asked Aurobindo a question like, is it okay to have physical relation with your wife? He said it's all the same. Whether you have it with your wife or somebody else. The excitement that follows is going to lead to a downfall. So it is, but morally it is different. To have physical relation with your wife is morally justified. But to have it with somebody else, it's immoral. The thing is, either ways, the act is the same. Nature works like that. Nature doesn't create boundaries like that. It says, okay, excitement, fine. Now your field is troubled. So what will happen is your field of nature is troubled. So that is the time all the forces are waiting. We want the trouble. You know, when there is confusion and storm, you don't know what's coming into your house if the door is open. That's what happens. It has nothing to do with husband, wife, and you will see very often this is my understanding as an aside, many husband-wife relations, the constant fights, bitterness and breakup is because of this. When the physical relation becomes, and nature's mechanism that it tries to, space it out. But people who are too much, into desired self, they cannot, accept it. But if they would learn, and that's why this used to be a dictum in olden times, thode din alag raho, it increases love. The reasons are this, because, it opens doors to forces which are, people knew this instinctively. It opens doors to forces. And then there is all these forces will come in and disturb. So there is a whole psychology behind it. So if we look at only moral purity, then yoga is a far cry. It's far more exacting. When we take to yoga, it goes beyond morality. It doesn't make us immoral. But that is a much greater truth. And that also he'll reveal to us. The impulses of feeling are what are ordinarily called emotions. Now he gives us a way. The emotions are of two kinds. Natural or eternal. Artificial or vikaras. Love is natural. It proceeds from jnanam and tends to endure in the evolution. It's true that love never dies. If ever love is born, it never dies. And if somebody says love died, that means it was never born. You mistook something else for love. So it endures. Hatred is a vikara from love. So it is a distortion. Many hatred, jealousies, all these are vikaras in love. A distortion or reaction caused by ajnanam. So courage is eternal. Fear is vikara. Compassion is eternal. Grina or weak pity, repulsion, disgust, etc. are vikaras. Those which are natural and eternal, love, courage, pity, truth, noble aspirations are dharma. Nowhere you will find such a practical way of explaining what is dharma. These are dharma. The others are adharma. Imagine if you look at it, most of humanity is living in that state. Hatred is natural, repulsion is natural, all kinds of reactions are natural. We call them natural. Anger, violence, these are natural. But they are vikaras, and they are the ones which are adharma. But further, look at it. Moreover, adharma is okay. But this is from the eternal standpoint and has nothing to do with the samajik or laukic or temporary. Dharma or adharma. Moreover, adharma is often necessary as a passage of preparation for passing from an undeveloped to a developed, a lower to a higher dharma. The yogin has to get rid of vikaras, but not of Sanatan dharma. You cannot get rid of love. Get rid of hatred, jealousies, and all these things. At one place, Aurobindo says, you cannot slay Maya. Don't try to do that because Maya is Maya of the Lord. Then what do we have to remove is moha. Moha is the delusion, the kind of asakti. That you have to slay. So, desire is composed of three elements. These are all yogic sadhan. I found very profound psychological insights which are applicable universally, and Aurobindo speaks of them in his own way. Desire is composed of three elements: attachment or asakti, longing or kamana, and preference or ragadvesha. Get rid of attachment first. Use your will and purified ahankara to throw out that clinging and insistence of things. What is that clinging? Which says, I must have that, I cannot do without that. How to know between desire and need? The mother explains exactly this way. Look into yourself and see if you have this urge that I cannot do without it. Then it is a desire. Purify desire and keep the truth intact. That is the difficult work. Mother at one place says an ingot of gold hidden behind, it's like dhan ki bali, a grain of wheat covered by all the, have you seen, this, what is this called, dhan kavo, whatever. Haystack. Not needle but a grain of wheat. And how how it is extracted? In India, people just put it on the road. And when cars and trucks go over it, it flies around, or you have to beat it around. So to extract that little grain of wheat, which is there inside huge haystacks, so we understand that, well, that's how life deals with that, to extract that little baby. But we often throw away the baby with the bathwater. So we are being told, don't do that. Keep the baby, throw away the bathwater. I must have that. I cannot do without that. And returns on the idea of it, even when it is persistently denied. That's how you see. Evil is born, forcing oneself, etc. When the emotions are quiet, this asakti will of itself die away. But for a time, it will rage a great deal and try to get the emotions active again. Apply the will steadily and patiently. And do not get disturbed by failure, for desire is a terrible thing, as difficult to get rid of as a leech. I don't know if somebody has ever experienced leech. You have to leave some blood, then only it will go. Or the other way is to put some salt, which means it's going to hurt you very much. Leech will go, but it will hurt because it's rubbing salt on injury. So that's how leech is. And they were used at one point of time as a treatment. You know why? It was supposed, there was an occult truth, but completely misunderstood. Blood is a vehicle of the vital energy when the prana is asuddha. So you take out that blood. Now, they didn't know how to, all this occult knowledge had been lost. But this was the truth behind it, which took a completely gross form and a crude and distorted form. Please don't try leech bloodletting. But by the way, people used to get all right. It's a different matter that one of the American president died because they kept leeching him. And he became worse, so they added more leeches. He became worse, they added more leeches, till finally he died of, blood loss and dehydration. But people used to, this leech and bloodletting was one of the ways that people were cured. However crude it is crude from today's perspective. But how they were cured? Because certain elements which flow in the blood, they were being taken out. Please don't quote me as a doctor, okay? I am not advocating leech bloodletting. Right. So, it is indeed the daughter of the horse leech crying, "Give, give." Do not violently silence the cry. So, such a beautiful. No, I will not give in to desire. Desire will say, good. Now it will use that force and come back to you redoubled. So, what is to be done? Do not violently silence the cry, ignore it. And use your will to get rid of the clamorer. When asakti becomes weak, kamna loses 9/10 of its force and you can easily throw it off. Still, for some time, out of sheer habit, the longing for certain things will come. Not in the heart of buddhi, but in the prana. So you see that even when from thought things have passed away, from the heart they have passed away, they cling to the body and tend to return, and the lower prana. Only if asakti is gone, the refusal of the thing craved will not leave behind it a permanent grief or continual hunger. So this is how many practical things get rid of that raga and dvesh and have perfect samta. You will not ask or crave for anything, for kamana is gone. But when some things come, you will not like them. When other things come, you will feel glad and exultant. You will not rebel or cling to what you have, but you will not like the coming of the evil. You will not like the loss of your joy. Even though you say, very good, and submit, get rid of that raga and dvesh. So one is that I want things, now that is gone. The second aspect is things that you don't want, they come in life. How do you deal with that? The yogin will not, oh my God, why has God done this to me? Complaint. And there also he will submit. He will not react the way ordinary person reacts. See, this is the difference. The life of a yogin and the ordinary life, they move on the same experiences. Landscapes are not different from the beginning. But slowly, the response of the yogin is very different than the response of the average ordinary humanity. And that's what marks the yogin, not how many hours one has spent in meditation. When Mother was asked that is the number of hours spent in meditation a sign of spiritual progress, he said, not at all. These are disciplines. People do it. It doesn't mean you are progressing. The real test of progress is in life, how do you apply it? Then she was asked that, people even, she says that one may do meditation regularly, do all these pranayam, Raj Yogic practices, but one may not be spiritual at all. Her words. All these practices, sometimes they even puff up the ego. You know what? I am a yogi. I am doing sadhana. First thing one learns in yoga is that sadhana is done by the divine. So this is how. And when you have perfect samta, you have all that experiences. Then he speaks finally about impurities in the body. Impurities in the body show themselves chiefly as disease, as pain, as the discomfort of heat and cold, as the necessity of the excretive processes. That's how you throw out many things. And Sri Aurobindo even was mastering that. If you look at the records of yoga, to that extent, that can this also be mastered? It is said that even it may sound very strange, but even the excreta of those who have gone to that point, they can be fragrant. This is a story which I have heard. Why? Because even that waste carries something of that. But normally you see that's how nature is designed. Foul smelling, dirty. But all this process, there is an occult dimension behind it which we have lost. So Kaya Siddhi, one of the first sign is disappearance of all tendency to disease. So one of the first things that actually happens through the yoga is that tendencies to fall sick, etc., frequent, they tend to go away into the background. The second is liberation from the dvandva of heat and cold. The mother speaks of this even in when she speaks about transformation. She says when you are free from both of them, that means the There is the conversion of the aspiration within the physical for the divine. One of the signs is you are freed from the clutch of cold and heat. It doesn't mean that you will start, taking off your shirt and banyan when it is cold. No, it doesn't mean that. But you're not in its grip and clutch. Some people all the time, oh my God, it is so cold. So it's okay. Don't get so hyper about it. Or some people, oh, how hot it is, how much is the temperature. Their whole consciousness is occupied with the body. So one of the signs of conversion is you are freed from heat and cold, which will either go altogether or change to pleasurable sensations, often marked by electrical phenomenon. And the third, the diminution or disappearance of excretive activity. Can you imagine to what extent the yoga can go? Pain also can be entirely eliminated from the body, but even before the reaction called pain is got rid of, or even without its being got rid of, the discomfort of pain can be removed and replaced by a sort of bodily ananda. Finally, the craving of hunger and thirst disappears from the prana to which it belongs, and the dependence on food diminishes or ceases. The perfection of all this is the basis of Kaya Siddhi. So that means every time we feel very hungry, just hold on. Offer pain. This is something which one can actually practice. It's easy to practice it. When there is pain somewhere, so what do? Learn to be a witness. Try to offer it. Try to bring in peace into that part. Relax that part. Make it wide. Mother speaks of it in much later in 60s conversation. Make yourself immobile. Try to widen. Open that part to the light. Surrender it to the grace. And that's how, so Roga becomes a kind of yoga. Why? Because then in that spot which is paining and hurting terribly, that light begins to come, work upon it, change it. That's the path. So everything is a path. So in conclusion, in this book, this is a whole book, big book, but I'm just picked up some passages. I have finished what I had to say. This is what Sri Aurobindo's pen is writing, but who is... the author is Raja Ram Mohan Roy, but Sri Aurobindo's pen has been used. I will only add a word in conclusion. You must not think that what I have given you is all the knowledge you need about yourself or about the yoga. On the contrary, these are only certain indications necessary at a particular stage. They are chiefly important for purification, which is the first part of the yoga. After the Shuddhi is complete, one has to perfect the Mukti to get liberation. A thing easy after Shuddhi, impossible before it. So you see in synthesis, Sri Aurobindo speaks of Shuddhi, Mukti, Siddhi, Bhukti, the divine enjoyment. By Mukti, I do not mean lay, which is a thing not to be pursued or desired, but waited for whenever God wills, but liberation from ignorance, ahankar, and all dualities. With the progress of the purification, there will be a natural tendency towards liberation, and the further stages of yoga, bhukti and siddhi, liberated enjoyment and perfection. As you go forward, you'll have to change your attitude, not radically, but in certain important points. So this, all that he says, and at the end, something very interesting which I found. Vairagya is to me merely a temporary state of mind which God uses to enforce rejection of that to which the old sanskaras cling too obstinately, and to be unseated from it by mere abhyas. This is exactly what Sri Aurobindo speaks of. In fact, the mother goes one step further. She was asked about renunciation. She said, in our yoga we don't talk of renunciation. Because if you still feel the need to renounce something, that means you are really not asking for that. And Sri Aurobindo puts it in synthesis that sacrifice is not self-mortification. Sacrifice is a joyous thing. Then it carries a meaning. Not like, I have come to God. There are people, sometimes they say that. I have heard it, even in the ashram context. Oh, I left all this thing and I came here. You didn't do a favor to God. He did a favor to you by helping you to leave certain things which will help you to come here. But there is this idea of, I have renounced, I have given, I have sacrificed. So, he reminds us, attachment to Vairagya is as harmful as attachment to Lobha itself. And Mother says these two extremes, the ascetic's refusal, where he would mortify himself, and the indulgent man, they are at the same level. You know, that story of the Naga sannyasi who would keep, a patta, leaf, below his feet. There are some sadhus who are like that. He came to give a talk in Sri Aurobindo Ashram, Delhi. I don't know who invited and why they invited, that itself, I don't know. But after hearing him talk about detachment, Surendranath Johar made a very interesting remark. He said, everything is fine, but you seem to be too attached to your detachment. So this is where we have to understand that it's not an end. Again, if you think with the Buddhists that all life is a misery and extinction of some kind, the highest good, or if you think with the Mayavadin that we came into this world with no other object but to get out of it again as soon as possible, like the famous general whose greatest military exploit was to march up a hill in order to march back again. You had better pass me by. I am a tantric. Then you don't talk about me if that's your approach to life. I regard the world as born of Ananda. Exactly, what Sri Aurobindo would later on remind us. I am a tantric. I regard the world as born of Ananda and living by Ananda. Bliss is the secret stuff of all that lives. Sri Aurobindo's line. Bliss is the root of creation. Bliss is the final thing of creation. So, sir, what about suffering, pain? Pleasure and pain are incidents in the varied plot of the great drama of life. They will come in between and go away. They are not the beginning nor the end of creation. See, the beginning is bliss, unconscious bliss. Look at all the mountains, earth, stars. You can still connect with the joy which is concealed behind inanimate matter. The beginning is bliss. Look at the flowing rivers, especially before man has come, the wild forest, everything. There is joy. Even now, even when you watch from a distance, National Geographic and all these things, it's amazing the kind of joy people feel. That's why people need to retire into the forest. Pain comes with life as it evolves into higher animals. Suffering comes with the coming of mind. What does the mind do? It multiplies the pain 10 times. You have a hurt. Now it says, why God gave me this hurt now? Poor God. Or why this person hurt me? What will happen to it? When it will heal? Otherwise, the hurt would have just gone away in a short period of time. But the mind, by all these things, fear, it tends to magnify it 10 times. But the mind can equally, do the opposite. That it's okay, it will be all right. So this is how it's born from Ananda. Wheeling from Ananda to Ananda. Ananda and Shakti, these are the two real terms of existence. Sorrow and weakness are vikaras born of Ajnanam. And actually, if you keep love, remove these vikaras, it's bliss. Where is the problem? If you keep courage and don't have fear, death may happen, this may happen. You enjoy. Even the great war becomes holiday of a fight. Of the forgetfulness of the high and true self. And then he gives the example of Shri Krishna himself. In this whole thing he ends like this. But the action he holds up as an example, Shri Krishna, is the action of the great gods. Even as Goethe speaks of the action of the great natural forces, disinterested, unwearying, self-poised in bliss, not inert with the tamas, not fretful with the rajas, not limited even by the sattvic ahankara, action made one in difference with the Purushottama. See, this is what we have lost completely. When I look at our Purvaj in Pandavas, you can see them. They were not afraid of action. I mean, action which may sound to our modern mentality even, Arey, what are they doing? They were not afraid of it. You see, that story I often quote when Bhima is asked, why did you kill 100 children of Gandhari? You should have left one, morally, socially. Bhim says, If there were 200, I would have killed all of them. Now, this is not ego. This is the natural impulsion, like mighty nature moves against injustice, then it doesn't care. 100, 200, 1,000. It is Kali's force which is working. It doesn't care that, okay, one I will leave. Evil is evil, it destroys. That's the kind of might our Purvaj had in them. Now we have all this, Victorian morality, pseudo, put up a show, hypocrisy behind. All this is the, result of our modern age. But when you go back into India's past, that's why it's very difficult to understand India with the lens of modern humanity. So, he says, not limited even by the Sattvic Ahankar. My being in his being, my Shakti only a particular action of his infinite Shakti of Kali. I am not ignorant, I am not bound, I am not sorrowful. I only play at being ignorant. I only pretend to be bound. Like an actor or like an audience, I only take the rasa of sorrow. Beautiful. I can throw it off when I please. It actually happens. If you experience life, it actually happens. You are crying like anything. Have you noticed? And something pleasant happens or somebody says something, suddenly your mood changes. If the person is present, you will not. Because you don't want to present that, you have changed. But there is another aspect which is going on behind. Like a joy. And then when the person is not there, that joy emerges, or in another moment something else emerges. But we call back the sorrow because we want to have the rasa of sorrow fully. It gives a great joy to know, you see, how much I am pained. How bad this world is. Horrible. There is a great joy in believing that you are somebody so great, because that way you become so important to yourself. So these are the things. This is the great mystery of existence, the Uttamam Rahasyam, God's great, wonderful and blissful secret. A secret logic rejects, but knowledge grasps at. And then the two things he reminds us. One is the prohibition of chesta, because it said will do. It's not that work is not to be done, action, but it is the sankalp. It is called in the Gita as Sarva Sankalp Sannyasi. You don't initiate an impulse. You wait for things to happen and arise within. Either through inspiration or through a, set of circumstances. People who want to push themselves. I want to go and give a talk. I am coming that side. Will you arrange my talks there also? People sometimes ask, how do you expect me to do that? Now, this chesta is sign of lack of surrender. But if you allow action to develop, that is how it is said in the yoga, that yogin allows the action to develop. This is how it develops, by the impulsion of the Shakti. And that's a perfected action. Finally, the aim of the particular path of yoga indicated is not the assertion of the individual will, but surrender of the individual will, its absolute, unreserved and ungrudging surrender into the direction and control of the infinite being. Now, there are many fascinating things. As I said, he talks about Tilak, he talks about, there is a very interesting automatic writing. But before that, Aurobindo speaks about, there is a place where he speaks about the future. And this is very interesting. He says, it's not Aurobindo, but automatic writing. The being entity which has come is writing. 1956-57 is the year of fulfillment. And there are many such fascinating aspects. He talks about the 10 types of, humanity. Then he says, man is not here. Mother spoke of that in the agenda. That man comes from very high. He has descended into the animal body. That's how he carries the evolution further. But he comes from that high realm near the overmind. That's why man feels always as if there is a God inside. But he has been made to forget so that he can recover the full Godhead inside him. He comes from there. When he saw the different bodies ready, then in the animal body, and that first body of man, man already exists but as a god or demigod in the Bhuvar Lok of Bhu, not as man upon earth. There he is Deva, Asura, Rakshasa, Pramat, Pishach, Pashu, or as Deva he is either Gandharv, Yaksh, Vidyadhar or any of the Karma Devas. For man is a son of the Manu and is assigned his place in Div and Pradeep, in heaven and in the Sarg Bhumis. When the human body is ready, then he descends upon earth and occupies it. The animal proper, his manifestation in animal form is always a partial incarnation, as will be seen hereafter. So, you see, we have these, often we talk about, Vanara in Ramayana time. Sri Aurobindo actually says that yes, there is a type of humanity there was, which is the animal kind, close to the animal, and that is the Vanara. Vanara is not actually the way it is described. Today we think, oh, they were monkeys. But actually we speak about the ape-like humanity. And he speaks of that. And what is the sign of the animal humanity? You'll have a human body, but animal humanity. They live in packs, tribes, etc. with a communal existence. मेरा जात वाला है क्या? जैसे the moment, there is a meeting of language, the moment, oh, you are also eating the same thing which I like. My tribe, my clan, this is, what does Sri Krishna break in the Gita? Arjun, make your own choices, if today's modern language. Yes, these are the established customs. Make your own choices. How to make choices? Develop your discerning intelligence. Now with the discerning intelligence, you will see that even if you die, there is no problem. You will see there is no real death. So Arjuna is still confused. He doesn't understand all this. So Krishna, okay, go beyond it. Don't fall below it. Surrender all to me and be guided by my will. So if you really look at it, Arjuna is worried only about clan and tribe. Clan and tribes is the way of the animal humanity. And then out of that you have the individual. That's where one really becomes a human being worthy of being human, called human. So animals live in packs. They live in packs, tribes, etc. with a communal existence. The individuality is less vigorous. If they were not individual, they would not be able to incarnate in individual forms. The body is only the physical type of the soul. The soul, if it were only a communal soul, would manifest in some complex body, of which the conglomeration of the different parts would be the soul unity. Soul unity. So in animals, you don't have individual souls. You have the soul of the species. That's what it means. And in early humanity, which is more close to the tribe, it is like that. It's a communal soul. There is another very interesting automatic writing in 1920. Again, Sri Aurobindo did not encourage it, he discouraged it. And he said mixed elements can come from the subliminal, from the subconscious, from all around. But there's some very interesting piece of writing. One of them is 1920, one of the guests of the future. Somebody has come from the future. At one place he says, Mars, which was the previous stage of evolution, theatre of evolution, now it is Earth. But a cycle of evolution took place on Mars. Probably that's why we are so attracted. And we want to know. And possibly now people know there is water. See, why we are attracted? Because in some way past, who knows which Chatur Yogas, the whole theatre was on Mars. Then God said, let's shift the scene. Let's come to Earth. And if He wants, He can shift it further. So, but for the moment it is Earth. So we don't know, the divine has ways and means. Like whole cities, when after 300 years they become uninhabitable, as Sri Aurobindo has said, and they need to be rebuilt. So, one of the guests of the future, millions of men are waiting for the day that comes, but it comes not till the light has descended. And who shall make the light descend? Half lights will not do. They prepare and pass and fade. So there are millions of people. Mother says there are souls which are waiting to be born. They have already gone into the future. And they are waiting. Some of them are hanging around in the service tree for young couples to come and say, we want a baby. Even without their saying, they come. This is not an advice, but just statement of fact. Mother has confirmed this. So just a statement of. But be careful. These are going to be massive barrier breaker. They are not going to listen to you. You want a goody child who will listen to Mata Pita ke charan chhuo, vandana karo, obey them, then don't try this. They will come and change you. Dad, don't tell lies. Mama, this is not the way to live. Don't scold me. If you deal with me like this, I'll go back to my home. Be careful. Huh? So, cautionary note. So, there are millions of men waiting to enter into the present when the time is right. There is a note on Tilak. He is, I believe, in the intermediate plane. He had a strong will to live because he felt that his work was not finished. And when a man passes from the body with that feeling strong upon him, his personality is for a time turned toward the field of his human actions. Only a time is needed to bridge over the transition from one consciousness to another. When that is done, he will act for a time on the intermediate plane, probably until he is satisfied that the idea governing him is in good train towards success, or until he has worked out the force of the attacking idea in his own consciousness. Just imagine that, he continues to work. We don't understand these things, that they don't vanish. If the work is unfinished, they continue to work upon the earth plane. Sri Ramakrishna said, for the next 300 years, I am going to be there for all my, disciples. So these are some of the secrets. And we'll close with this. Again, continuing with Tilak. His psychic personality is composed of two parts. A higher soul, which is the real man. A strong and brilliant soul of a great flight. And another, which is the personality he works out in a certain round of lives and which gives the outward type of his human character and action. All of us have these two. All developed humanity. And there is a deeper inner person which the world does not see. And the other which is put forward for the sake of necessities of the kind of work or the kind of truth you are born to manifest in a particular lifetime. And then in another life. But the inner person is the real person. And if you know it, then one has realized the psychic being. Otherwise, one doesn't know it. He is one of those who helping to the higher race, but has chosen to take on himself the burden of the lower for the help of the world action. So he is one of those who belong to the higher race. So this is one of the greatest tribute that, one can have for a great personality like Bal Gangadhar Tilak. Even without the automatic writing, Sri Aurobindo was very appreciative of him, both for each other. And we see that there's some nice picture in 1907 Surat Congress. You see Sri Aurobindo and you see Tilak side by side to each other. Unfortunately, this is a very forgotten side of Indian history. People talk about only Gandhi onwards. And Tilak has gone into the background of the revolutionary movement. But we should not forget that just as Sri Aurobindo was the Mahakund, the Yagyavedi of the whole thing, they were like fires which are offering themselves into the Yagyagni. It is a result of their offering of sacrifice, prasad, that India got freedom. Gandhiji just came in between for a passing show.